On a chilly Boston morning, the campus of Harvard University was alive with the quiet hum of students rushing to their classes, clutching coffee cups and backpacks. The winter sun shone dimly through the leafless trees, casting long shadows on the old brick buildings. Among the crowd was Marcus Hayes, a tall, lean, young black student wearing a worn-out hoodie and jeans. Unlike many of the students here, Marcus wasn't from a wealthy family. He had grown up in the rougher parts of Chicago, raised by his grandmother after his parents passed away in a car accident when he was 10. His scholarship to Harvard was his lifeline, but it came with its own share of challenges, financial struggles, long work hours at the campus library, and an unshakable sense that many of his peers underestimated him. That morning, Marcus was on his way to the mathematics building for a class he both dreaded and loved. The professor teaching it, Dr. Leonard Whitmore, was a legend at Harvard, a man with snow-white hair, a sharp tongue, and an intimidating reputation for brilliance. Whitmore was known for his impossible problems, the kind that could stump even graduate students. He was also known for his bluntness, and more than once, Marcus had been on the receiving end of his razor-sharp remarks about keeping up with the class. When Marcus entered the lecture hall, the atmosphere was different today. The chalkboard at the front was completely blank, and Dr. Whitmore stood beside it with his arms crossed, looking unusually smug. The students settled in, whispering to each other, sensing something unusual was about to happen. "Good morning, everyone," Whitmore began, his voice crisp. "Today's lesson will be unconventional." He picked up a piece of chalk and, in neat, deliberate strokes, began writing a long and complex equation across the board. Symbols, Greek letters, and nested functions sprawled in a tangled but precise form, stretching nearly from one end of the board to the other. "This," he said, stepping back, "is an equation that has remained unsolved for decades. Some of the brightest minds in mathematics have attempted it and failed. Today, I am going to issue a challenge." He turned to the class, his eyes scanning the rows. "Whoever can solve this problem will receive something of significant value." The room filled with quiet murmurs. One student raised her hand. "What kind of value, sir?" Whitmore allowed himself a sly smile. "My car. A 2022 Tesla Model S Plaid. Keys, title, everything, yours." Gas erupted across the lecture hall. A Tesla Model S Plaid wasn't just a car, it was a statement. Sleek, powerful, and worth over $100,000. Everyone suddenly leaned forward, their eyes fixed on the equation. Whitmore's gaze swept across the room before landing squarely on Marcus. "You," he said sharply. "Hayes, why don't you take a crack at it?" Marcus froze, feeling the heat rise in his cheeks. "Me, sir, yes, you're always so quiet back there. Let's see if there's anything behind that silence. Solve this, and the car is yours. If not, well, it'll be a learning experience." A few students chuckled under their breath. Marcus knew what that tone meant. Whitmore didn't expect him to solve it. Maybe he thought Marcus wasn't capable. Maybe this was another one of those subtle tests to prove a point about effort and limitations. Still, Marcus stood up and walked to the front. The chalk felt cold in his hand. He studied the equation, his mind whirring. It was a monster of a problem, a combination of nonlinear differential equations, advanced number theory, and what looked like a cryptographic component. Whitmore leaned casually against the desk, watching. "Don't worry, Mr. Hayes," he said in a low voice only Marcus could hear. "This is beyond your level. But trying is important. Something in Marcus shifted at those words. Beyond your level. I had heard that his whole life, from teachers, from neighbors, from anyone who looked at where I came from and decided his ceiling was lower than others. I took a deep breath and began. First, I rewrote the equation in a slightly different form, simplifying the nested functions into smaller chunks. The board began to fill with smaller steps, substitutions, and algebraic manipulations. His classmates started watching in silence as I moved methodically, erasing, rewriting, double-checking his work. 30 minutes passed. Whitemore's smirk faded into something else, a faint frown, maybe even curiosity. Marcus didn't stop. I switched to another section of the board, breaking down a particularly ugly section of the equation into a series of transformations I recognized from his late-night study sessions. By the time an hour had passed, the lecture hall was so quiet that the only sound was the scratching of chalk. Whitmore now stood with his arms uncrossed, eyes narrowed in concentration. Marcos's hoodie sleeves were chalk-dusted, his brow damp with sweat. Finally, after nearly 90 minutes, Marcus set the chalk down. I stepped back and looked at the sprawling solution on the board, 3 entire panels covered in numbers and symbols. I turned to Whitmore. "That's it," I said simply. The professor walked slowly to the board, scanning the work with the precision of a surgeon. The silence stretched on. Then, Whitmore stopped, turned to Marcus, and for the first time since Marcus had met him, the man looked almost stunned. The corners of Whitmore's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. "Class dismissed," I said abruptly, and the students began packing up, whispering frantically about what they had just witnessed. As the room emptied, Whitmore remained by the board, still looking at Marcus's solution. Marcus was about to leave when the professor's voice stopped him. "Stay a moment, Mr. Hayes. We need to talk about that car. If you want, I can continue with part 2 where we reveal exactly what happened when the professor checked the solution and why the challenge changed both of their lives."